Hi, everybody. This is Angela and Dan Clark, my husband.
Hi, everybody.
You guys, we just wanted to lift up the day and the situation and our lives and try to bring some light, some encouragement, some hope, some truth. I want to talk about denial right now. And you guys, we're kind of a divided nation in some ways. I want to try to help bring that together, as does Dan, and just try to cause us to somehow begin to realize. I guess this is what I want to say. I shared this in the last video, but Dan and I both been through a good bit of betrayal through basically our religion for the most part. For me, also a relationship that was pretty intense, and I nearly died. But what happened is that it caused me to be a little bit more willing to accept betrayal in other parts of my life. So when I go to a church, I can hear the different things that I realize that's not right, and I'll admit it, and I can face it. But sometimes that's not easy. We don't really want to. We don't like to admit that things are not the way that we thought that they were. Like in a relationship, we think that relationship is a certain way, and that we love each other, and we have a denial going on. When in actuality, that relationship is completely falling apart, and there's really nothing there. That happened to Dan, and it happened to me too. And so when we woke up and we realized the truth, it was hard, and we went through some really tough years because of that, the depth of the betrayal that was so powerful, and about killed us both off, I think.
Yeah.
And so I just want to talk about that. So what we're going to need to do, guys, we're going to have to be willing to see things that we normally would not be willing to see, to be willing to open our eyes to things that we don't normally want to even think about, accept, the areas that we normally would never listen about or think about. We just need to open up and be more willing to try to hear the other side of this story, the other point of view. And we're going to have to try and pray to God that we can try to come together with God's help and see each other's point of view, and try to come on the side of the other person and really be humble, really humble ourselves, because we can't be a nation that's divided, because a kingdom divided against itself will not and cannot stand. It's just a no-duh. So we have to make this work, and it's not going to be easy. We've got some tough stuff ahead of us right now. Like today, I was watching, actually last night, I rewatched it again today, about some things that were going on in Washington. Now, I have not been willing to look at the fact that people are saying that they think they should be able to defund the police. And I'm like, what in the world? That doesn't sound like anything that I'd ever want to do. Well, where I happen to live, we have a fairly good police department for the most part. I at least for me, yeah. I have not had a really bad experience. I mean, there's some things I don't like. That I feel like some things should be dealt with that are not, that they let slide pretty badly, because they don't want to, I don't know why, that they don't want to have that on our city record.
Locking people up crazy.
Yeah,
They're just not crazy about taking people in every time they sneeze.
Yeah, I'm not sure, I mean, to me, that just the way they handle it, I don't like it, but they've been good to us, and I don't feel that sense of that I can't trust them, or that if I call the police, they're not going to come and show up at my house and take care of me. I just don't have that sense. But what happened in Washington shocked me really badly. So a 74-year-old woman who was under the care of a power of attorney, because she was, to that point, she was not healthy. She really needed that help all the time, and in every which way, this lady had control and power over her life, and she needed to go to the doctor. This lady felt she was feeling dizzy and not feeling good, so she ends up going to the hospital with a urinary tract infection that was got out of control. So she needed fluids, and that was really about all they could do for her. She was already on medication that they basically realized she needed fluids. Well, then they went further than that, though. They said that we want you to have that test kit to test for COVID. And she said, no, I'm not sick. There's nothing wrong with me. I didn't come in here for that, and I don't want to take that test. I'm good. And they said, no, you're going to take it. And it got to be this horrible drag out type of a situation where they pushed her and finally gave her a mask that for oxygen that she did not also want against her will. Finally got her to take the swab test, which she absolutely was refusing. And then she's like, okay, I want to go home now. And then they're like, no, now you've got to wait 3 days for us to get the test results, and you can't go anywhere. You're not going anywhere. And in the meantime, no one's allowed to be with her, not even her power of attorney that has all these controls over her life, can't speak for herself. That's why she has this lady to watch out for her. And anyway, they won't let her in, and it's getting pretty ugly. And so they finally call the police. Well, the police refused to come. And so finally, they kept on, being really upset about this, trying to get into the hospital. They weren't allowed in, trying to make headway, and they weren't making headway. And more and more people were gathering, and they weren't getting justice. The woman couldn't get out of the hospital. And so finally, the police showed up. And who did they defend? The people that were being done wrong, that were taking away their rights, all of their rights, really. And they literally, they ended up calling it was medical kidnapping. And so the police defended the hospital. They went into the hospital, pushed all the people out, took the lady who was, I guess the power of attorney, grabbed her neck, threw her outside, and then the men were trying to open the door, with their fingers, and the police opened it real quick and sprayed them with mace. I watched the whole thing. They were just, in no way were they trying to defend or hear or listen or bring peace or anything. They had their minds made up. It's like they have this agenda, and they don't care about what we want. And I'm telling you guys, in every which way, I could go on about it. It's really crazy what went on. But the rights were not considered at all. A lot of conversation that was made to the police officers, and they even answered one time, and it was so inappropriate. It's like, you guys really, really don't care about us. And so she said, if I need help, I know that I don't call you. I know that I have to call my friends if I need any help. And tonight I called my friends, and they came down, and we're going to get our mother out of here. And so anyway, they absolutely did not intend to help these people. And the people down in Washington State have realized that we can't go to the police for help. We don't call them. That's not where we call when we need anything. And for God's sake, you don't go to the hospital. This is how they look at this. And this should not be. So you know what? I now realize that I'm not against some people feeling that they need to defund the police, because after what I saw in that video, and it lasted a long time, it was a very long ordeal before they finally got her out of there. And it was just completely sick the way it was dealt with. And I think that, I hope the hospital gets in trouble. I hope those police officers get in a big fat trouble. I don't know. I now changed my mind. I realize that some people have a right to feel this way. Yeah, some places are not like others.
Yeah, some places, where we live, it says on the police cars to serve and to protect us. Us.
Right.
Not institutions. I mean, this lady was, like they said, she was kidnapped, medically kidnapped. And I'm seeing more and more of this. And honestly, I can't believe they're cops. I don't believe they're regular cops. Most of the cops I see will do citizens arrests. They're good. They listen. They don't go in authoritarian-wise and abuse people against their will. Yeah. If somebody goes in and don't need meds and don't need all this extra treatment they're trying to put people through, then they shouldn't have to go through it. So a cop, to me, that would do something like that would push people into medical things against their will and work for these hospitals and subject people to suffering, against their will, these aren't cops to me. No. The cops that I know, the cops that I've met, the ones I've known all my life have, for the most part, been here to serve and protect. And those are the real cops. So if you're a cop that's pushing people and making people take medical procedures because you want to kiss somebody's ass, then you're not my cop. You're not a cop. Those are the guys that should be thrown out or defunded or whatever you want to say.
So I love what the lady says. She says, if you don't know your rights, you're in trouble. And this is what she had to say to the police officers. She said, proud Americans who, that police officers are proud Americans who love their neighbor as they love themselves. And she's like, not. This is tyranny, it's chaos. They honor the rule of law. And she said, no honor here. Whatever the dictator up top says, that's what they're doing here. Americans love law and order. Law and order is that you don't violate anyone's private property rights. You don't threaten to use force on people. You don't infringe on anybody's right to life, liberty, and property. That's law. These guys don't love law, she said, but they don't know law. I must check that.
Control.
Yeah. They'll do whatever they're told. And she said, you'd shoot me if you were in fear for your life. And, they're like, yeah. And if someone radios in and says to shoot her or whoever's in the hop, and the police officer said, yep, that's what we would do. So they would obey whatever is radioed in. I was just doing my job. They're doing my job and feeding my family. That's all we care about. And so Kelly's like, you know what? You guys are blue ISIS. That's what you are, blue ISIS. She was so upset. And so I think it is important that we know our rights, because if we don't know our rights, we can't go about defending them. We don't know what to say to them. We do need to take some time to know what our rights are and what we say in certain situations. Like I saw on the internet the other day, what you legally should say if you don't want to take a vaccine, what you should legally say so that you cannot have to worry about that. Beyond that, there's a doctor. I just might as well just go along the same vein. So Dr. Tapper was on YouTube in some courtroom on December the 2nd, and he was literally giving up his career to be up there in front of the court speaking about this, what he's talking about. His wife did not want him to do it, but he literally just sacrificed himself to really be passionate about what he's talking about here, because he's concerned for our children and our children's children and the lives of the American people. And so he literally gave himself up. So he had done tons and tons of research about the kits, the testing kits themselves that we're using, because the American Association for Physicians and Surgeons have studied all this stuff too. And he said COVID-19 at the bottom line is that this is faulty testing, these test kits. The guy who reinvented the testing kit said that when you keep testing, it will produce a bunch of false positives. He said that and anyone can test positive for practically anything with this PCR test. If you run it long enough with the PCR and you do it well, you can find almost anything in anybody. It doesn't tell you that you're sick. This test was never meant to be diagnostic. It doesn't tell you whether you're sick or not. This test is a DNA grab. We do a culture, and so now this is the doctor talking. So that was what the guy who created this test kit said, okay? And he died a year ago. Now, isn't that interesting? Because this guy did this December the 2nd. He said he died last year. And so he died, right before or right at the beginning of this pandemic. Interesting, I think, because maybe maybe they knew that he would say this and they weren't going to have it. I don't know. I'm just saying this doesn't concern me. I think it's kind of curious that he died a year ago after, he said this. And so then the doctor said the test is a DNA grab. We do a culture swab in the, I'm going to say this wrong, posterior cavity of the sinuses. If this is such a deadly disease, why can't we swab your mask? Why can't we do saliva? You're telling me we have to go 3 inches deep into the posterior whatever of your cavity, 3 inches deep, millimeters from the blood-brain barrier to do a swab test? Then he said, Clinicals 101. This type of test needs subjective, it needs symptomatology, and it needs objective findings to correlate and correspond to the diagnosis, to confirm the diagnosis. An asymptomatic person has neither. That tells you that this is a faulty testing. This is Clinicals 101. Why do we have this faulty testing? The ECIP, we can't force, the ECIP, we can't force vaccinate anybody, but we can force compliance. That's the ECIP. We can't force vaccinate anybody, but we can force compliance. This is their idea. The WHO said that the great threat to the health world are the people who refuse vaccinations or non-vaccinated people. So the WHO said that the great threat to the health of the world are the people who refuse vaccinations or are non-vaccinated people. Pfizer and Moderna are lobbying the government, that was December the 2nd, to push force-mandated vaccines. There were bills last year to eradicate medical freedoms. Martin Luther King Jr. said that the ultimate measure of a man or woman is not where he stands in conflict and controversy. We don't have medical freedom. So anyway, he's trying to say that, how we stand in conflict and controversy, that's the measure of a man. That's what he was saying there. That messed up on the typing. We don't have medical freedom here. We have a medical dictatorship knocking on our doorstep. And that is what this Dr. Tapper said. So this is terribly disturbing to me because, that guy made that test kit. And it wasn't meant for this purpose that we're using it for. He said that it would not be effective and it would not be accurate and it was not made for testing. It's not made to decide if you're sick or not. All of this, that it would be, and he made it very crystal clear that this was not going to work. So you guys, we're allowing something to be testing us that's not even accurate in any way. Now, this is what I'm talking about being honest. This guy, Dr. Tapper, literally, he was broken up and choked up and crying before the judge who didn't want to hear what he had to say. And he probably gave up his career. I'm just saying, because he's really laying it out there. This is not all he said, but he had a lot to say because he is a very educated and had done hours and hours upon hours and days of research. That's just what the kind of guy he is. And he was terribly disturbed that everything about all of this is just being done wrong and dealt with wrong, and he's sickened by it. People are dying because of it. That bothers me. And so I don't know, you guys. I'm just being honest that this is creepy. This is creepy.
Wasn't he telling them not to sign the paper to make it into law, like you're giving away your rights? He said at the end, he goes, "Don't push this through." Yeah, he did. He talked about that too. He said the next thing that was going to happen is that they were going to start force mandating the vaccination as well. See, right now he said it's like force. For the testing, you have to wear masks. It's force mandated. You have to wear a mask. He said, and trust me, in a few months' time, it's going to be a force mandate of the vaccine. And he's going to fight tooth and nail to see that doesn't happen because it's the same kind of problem again. So you guys, I'm just being real. I'm being honest because this is a real, live, very incredibly educated doctor who's willing to give up his career, his his reputation as a doctor, to be honest about his findings. So I'm just being real here, okay? So then you go to the Planned Parenthood. So there was a guy, his name is Matt. Oh, you know what? That's right. He did too. David Daleiden, Daleiden, did a research. He said he started in 2013. And I believe he concluded it in about 2016, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, April 2016. Because on that day, in April 2016, a search warrant was served to go to his home. So he completed the whole thing. He put it out into the internet somehow. I'm not sure if it was Facebook or YouTube. He thought he'd get maybe 30,000 views, and he ended up getting a ton more than that, like in the 2 million, I think it was. And suddenly everybody's saying that we want to do indictments about what you found here, and it was this big deal about it. So guess what? Planned Parenthood was somebody who was donating a good bit of money to Kamala Harris, and at that time, and then suddenly now they're under attack. So what did Kamala Harris do? She had a meeting. There were people in the room. They took notes, and she called upon 11 agents of the California DOJ and
and literally overturned this guy's apartment and seized all his recording equipment, electronic equipment, his hard drive, everything that he was using. All to what she really wanted was the original videos. So so she specifically requested that they go and get these original videos. And again, they have found the notes. They have them of Kamala Harris having this done to this man. And what a crazy event, just because she wanted her money from them. I mean, she was already overstepping her bounds as a leader. She wasn't our vice president at that point. It was back in 2016 that she did this. I don't know what office she was holding at that time, but certainly didn't give her a right to order around the DOJ to go to this guy's house and seize his things and upturn everything in it and do all that they did to this man. I tell you what, this is really disturbing to me. And so the warrant to search and seizure at his home with tons of police, tons of guns, dogs, and again, they took everything. And so Kamala weaponized her office to punish this man on behalf of the donors who were supporting her whatever she was trying to come into office. I don't know what that was at the time. Again, abuse of power. So that's really bothersome to me. So I'm being real about this. This is not okay with me that this happened. And what in the world? It was never, no one ever said anything more about this. I mean, and now she's in office. And I mean, if we have this kind of abuse of power at that step in her life, what are we going to have now, guys? Oh my God, this is nuts. So, and then I wanted to talk about the fact that what are you doing with the fact that you're seeing on the news, because it's not on all the news channels, about this fence that's around the Capitol building, and the barbed wire up above it. That's all around. Some guy said it takes 2.5 hours to walk around it. And the fact that all the businesses are shut down in D.C., the fact that the lights are off at the Capitol at night. What are you doing with that information? Doesn't that kind of tell you that something's wrong, and that maybe everything's not the way that we think it is in that building? Maybe there's nothing going on in that building at all. Maybe, it's somewhere else. I'm just saying, are your eyes open? Are you looking at this? How about the videotapage we've seen of the buses, tons and tons of different kinds of buses, big ones, going in front of that White House, and then leaving, all the windows blacked out. What do you think about that? I'm just saying, what are you thinking about this? I want you to think, because if we're going to get better as a nation, we have to see what is, and we have to admit it's not conspiracy, because this is what I see. And it's, you guys, I searched it on the internet, and there's lots of different videos about this. So I'm not just making it up. This is not just conspiracy. This is what is. It's been on the regular news that you can watch on TV, okay? So this is not fake. And then there were fireworks that went off behind the White House, and then the lights went down, and then it was black, everywhere black. So how come nobody's talking about it? How come it's, what exactly is going on inside of there? Who was in those buses? What is going on? No one's talking about any of it. I'm just saying, weird things are going on. We need to acknowledge these things. I went myself on a search on the internet for hours and hours and hours, trying to figure out what's been going on with our country with regard to something I heard about, where they said that our birth certificates had been sold to the stock market, and that we were actually slaves because our country had gone into bankruptcy. And so I started searching this out, and I realized that we've been in bankruptcy. Like this was our 4th time we were about ready to go into bankruptcy, and we're going to be entangled with other nations and banking system, and more entangled with more nations than we ever were before. So each time that this happened, each time our country was in bankruptcy, we lost our freedoms, and we went more deeper into slavery than ever before. And this is fact. You can go research it yourself. And here again, why don't you research it on your own? Why just stick your head in the sand and pretend it isn't so? The fact of the matter is, you can find this on the internet by digging and finding out how this all happened, that we all got birth certificates and social security cards, that eventually more and more and more was used to track us and keep track of where we are living, and the birth certificates and the fact that the numbers that are on the bottom of it coincide exactly with the stock market, and that they sold them, and that they're using our labor as the way to pay back the loan. And so what about it, guys? And what about it that they started a new country, a corporation back in 1871? Go research that. And the fact that they changed the Constitution at that time and to their benefit. And guess what? That District of Columbia is not part of the United States of America. It's not part of the 50 states. How about you research that and realize that what is up with that? And the truth is that if you research, you'll find out that the Vatican, and I forgot who else, who owns us because of debt. But truly, I think it's also the bankers. But they say that we're owned by the Vatican. The way that the system that started in 1871, that particular constitution that was in a corporation, is under the Queen, or under the Vatican. We're under another country. But the truth is, because of all the debt, it's all the bankers. At least it's all that too. I don't understand how that's all coordinated, but anyway, we're all the banks. There's all these different banks throughout the world, and whenever we don't know, I don't know. I'd have to go and ask for my original birth certificate application to find out who bought my birth certificate. So it could be London, it could be Canada, depending on whatever bank bought your birth certificate. It's sick. These different people said, "Yeah, mine. I got mine. They bought me in Canada." And the other lady, "Yeah, well, I got mine, and mine was bought out by a bank in London." But you guys, this is real. So the truth is that there have been people that have been trying to, and over the years have been trying to get us out of this situation. And it's really cool because they actually did keep us from going into this next bankruptcy, and it's actually looking like, wow, there's some money that we didn't know about. So anyway, that's kind of exciting. So I wanted to tell you that. So I just want to ask you to please, consider that there's a lot of things that have got to change in this country. And it's mind-boggling. It's overwhelming when I think about it. Dan and I, because we were in cults, we were raised in cults, and got out, and then I got free for a while, and then I got back into another one, which is typical of someone who's been in a cult, who's not used to using their own mind, because you're trained to trust someone else because they know best and you don't, and you're taught that way from birth. You don't know another way. God is so good. He helped me to figure out another way. It took a while, but I learned how to use my brain, and so did Dan. We learned how to think for ourselves. And so none of this is easy. It isn't. It's kind of painful because we don't like to admit that we've been betrayed. It's a very painful thing to have to admit. But what if you have been betrayed by your church? So what I wanted to say about it, there's another aspect of this, and that's that religion also has been a catalyst for keeping us pushed down without using our own minds, without using the creativity that the Creator has given each of us. There are known facts about how to really be very, very dynamic in this world, even very wealthy, because of the way that we think and our imagination and how we use our imagination, because of the divine giving of the ideas that are given to us by God when we were actually probably made in our mother's womb by God. And so those desires are meant for us to go to the Father, to our God, and then He blesses, when you ask to know your purpose, and you once you just take the thoughts that come from your heart and you imagine you doing that, and they know that this creates that thing. It's like pointing your finger just by your imagination. And so there's all kinds of things like this, so many. But we've been told in the churches that we're sinners, and in Dan's church that we're good for nothing slaves. I couldn't even believe it when I heard that. I had this one Jehovah's Witness meeting, and the answer to the questions that they were going, this little book that they were reading through and looking at the questions, and people would raise their hand to answer it, and the answer was always, "We're good for nothing slaves, and what we're doing we ought to be doing." I couldn't believe it. I wanted to throw up. And they kept on saying it. That kept on being the answer. And I wanted to scream. I was so mad. And I'm like, you don't do that to anyone. I mean, you would never have your boss say to you, oh, you're just a good for nothing slave. I mean, you just wouldn't hear that. But you guys, the truth is, we're slaves in our own country. And we've slowly gotten used to it. Then now we're working 2 and 3 jobs. Now we can't even work at all. Now we're losing our businesses, and we're just going down, 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 because they want ultimate control over us, and that's the real truth. Why else would they be doing it? They want us to be dependent upon them, so they don't have to fear anything, so that they can be comfortable, because they have us very weakened down and begging them for just give me my money and I'll be happy. I'll do whatever you say. Just make sure I'm comfortable. You guys, we're gonna have to really get serious and realize that we're in deep doo-doo and that we need God's help. We have to wake up to the reality of this abuse, the abuse of power, and the abuse of humanity, and the abuse of our pursuit of liberty and happiness. We have a right for the pursuit of happiness and liberty, and a right to justice, and a right to freedom, a freedom of religion. All these rights, we're just so glad to let them go away. Really? What are our kids going to do? I mean, it's going to be really bad for them. We're going to have to fight. And so we're going to have to come together. We're going to have to agree that these things are not right. I tried to, I've been volunteering at the rescue mission down in Boise, and they said I can't do that anymore because of COVID. So I thought, okay, well, I'll go to the Salvation Army in my area right here where I live, and because it's so much closer, and I'll get involved there. And I called them, and they said, we're not taking any volunteers at all. All volunteer work is canceled until this COVID thing is over. You guys, it could be years. It could be never. And so, here's another one of those things where when we volunteer, we do good in this world, we feel good about ourselves. We feel like we have a purpose, we have a meaning, we have joy that comes from that. It's a God-given thing. We're also blessed. We're blessed to be a blessing. And when we bless others, God blesses us. So when they're telling us no volunteering all over the place, number one, people aren't getting helped that desperately need it more now than ever. And then we are not receiving the blessing of the joy in our hearts to feel good about life. So here's another way that we're being robbed. We can't even frickin' volunteer. This is really sick. It's really, really sick. Anyway, I could talk about more, but I think I'm going to call it quits for right now. I guess maybe I'll end on this. I love this story that Sylvester Stallone shared with Pat Robertson the other day, just sharing about his movie and why he made it, and Pat Robertson trying to understand why and how that fighting and punching each other and all that could in any way glorify God. But his whole thing is that we have an enemy, and we have, and there needs to be strength within us to fight that enemy. And Dan, now I'm forgetting what I was going to say about it. Can you say something about that? Sylvester Stallone, what he had to say. It was so good. I just loved his talk. Such a strong man. Really relied. He learned that life has these ups and downs. He got weak and humble and broken and beaten down. And then he would cry out to God, and then God would raise him back up again and strengthen him, and then he started getting involved in the world because now he's famous, and then all of a sudden he's doing things that he doesn't want to be doing and getting caught up in this world, and then life knocked him back down again, and then he had to get back up and fight, and and he has a big heart for this world, for people, for living on purpose, for living a good life. What else could you say about it, Dan?
Yeah, he just says we got to stand for something. Yeah, and so that was his way out, and he stood. He knew these movies would change the world, Rocky, and all the way up to, I don't know if it's Rocky 5 or whatever, but they were all had an intention to overcome what was in front of them, and a lot of it was evil. When he fought that Russian guy.
Oh, right.
He said it was like evil. Anyway, a lot of people don't know that Russian guy put him in the hospital
for a month.
Yeah, and he was really messed up. And they were kind of like, not good friends when they came into that ring. It was truthfully, they weren't good friends. And anyway, they're friends now. But he was just saying that we have to stand up and we have to fight sometimes, because Pat Robinson couldn't get it about the fight. He was just like, I don't understand this boxing and it's knocking people down. And he's like, no, you get knocked down and you get back up, and you get knocked down and you get back up. And you work to defeat this enemy. You don't let the enemy overtake you. So I kind of like that interview too. That was a good interview.
I feel like most of this happened to him.
Literally,
he was given this dream by God for this movie. So he was poor. He was in college, right? He was in college?
Not yet.
No. So he was poor, and he had this dream. He kept going to all the movie producers. I know he'd taken a movie, at least how to make a movie course.
Yeah.
I think he was in college, yeah. And so they kept saying, no, you cannot play in your own movie. And probably because he had a little bit of a speech impediment. I know it's improved over the years, but there were a lot of reasons why that happened to him. But they're like, no. How many times did he go to try to do that movie, Dan? It was crazy amount. 1,500 rejections, some crazy. It was something, maybe it was a lot more than that. Literally, in the end, he was so poor he had to sell his own dog. And then then suddenly, right after that, he gets a contract to be playing this in his own movie, because that's how God showed it to him in his dream. You're playing in your own movie. So he had to go through all those rejections, and sold his dog. Then he goes back to the guy and says, please, can I buy back my dog? And the guy said no. And so he literally had to pay the guy, what was it, Dan, like a couple $100,000 or something, like a huge amount of money to get his dog back. And it was the most, he's gone through so much. And then in one of the movies, he lost his wife. So then he had to have a reason to live again and to be in life's game. And so he started working out again, and brought himself back again from the dead. And he was depressed. Life's just got these ups and downs, and you got to stay in the game. You got to fight when you don't want to fight. And it was just a really good talk. A really good guy, a great. He got this dream from God. This movie, the Rocky Balboa, and I think he's an incredible man. He has a big, huge heart for God, for people. He's a great father. So anyway, I just want to say that. And then Steve Harvey, he's another. I want to use him as an example too. He literally lived in his car. I think he said it was 3 years. At least it was 2. I think it was 3. And it was hard at times, very, very hard. And he just cried out to God, please, help me. There's got to be something better than this. And anyway, a circumstance happened where somebody that he knew, they saw that he was funny, and then they talked about some comedy show, and he goes, what are you talking about, a comedy show? Next thing you know, she says, why don't you don't know about comedy shows? So she takes him to it, and the next thing he realizes it's like God tells him, after he asked God, please show me what I'm supposed to do. Show me, is this all there is? Please help me. And then he sees that and he goes, oh my gosh, I know what I'm supposed to do the rest of my life. And so he went and he interviewed, and he got on to a comedy show, and the rest is history. But he was told by the teacher in school that you will never ever amount to anything. Well, when he finally made it in the comedy shows, he got a big TV and he took it to his teacher and rang her doorbell and gave her that as a gift, because he wanted her to see and watch on TV that he was not a loser like she had said. And sometimes it's those knockdowns, like Rocky Balboa, it's those knockdowns that make you say, no, I'm gonna make it. And I remember a teacher said to one of my children, she says, you did not do the way that I was trying to get you to do it with this art, and you know what, you are never going to be good in art, and you're just, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I've never heard of such a thing as an art teacher acting like that. Everybody always gets A's in art. Who doesn't get an A in art? It's easy. That's the one class you can count on getting an A. And he got a bad grade. I don't know. It wasn't a D, but it was like a C, or it was just ridiculous. And all of a sudden it hits me. That's your gift. That is your gift, young man, and that's why you're getting knocked down, because this is your gift. And so I want to say, if anybody ever tells you that you can't do that, Dan had the same thing happen. He is a fine wood finisher, maybe, very possibly, the best in the world. I don't know absolutely, but I'm pretty sure that's a very good possibility. Been doing it for 41 years. And he's worked for Bill Gates, Ritz-Carlton hotels, been around. Really, he's just really, really good. And one day when he was in the beginning stages of wood finishing, this guy said, "Oh, you will never make a wood finisher. You've got a heavy hand, and you're geez." Well, Dan is the finest. He's the finest. And so again, where if you hear somebody say, you'll never, well, guess what? That's the very gift that God gave you, and the enemy's after it to make sure you don't go down that road and that you don't become the best in that field, because Dan is the very best. So anyway, we could do amazing things, guys, and together and with humility. We're going to have humility, I'm afraid, to get through this, what we're going through as a nation. We're going to have to humble ourselves. We're going to have to put our faces to the ground, pray to our God, praise and thank Him. I feel that He has heard our prayer. I've heard that God has heard our prayer. I hope to God that that is true, because I'm hearing that what we're needing to do right now is to praise God for the victory, because He's already on it and He's trying to get this straightened out with us. So I just want to say we're going to have to open up our ears and our hearts and our minds to see what is, even if we don't want to see it, even if we'd rather not look at it, when we'd rather just say, "Oh, I don't believe that. That's poppycock. Oh, that's just conspiracy. Oh, that's ridiculous." Well, hello, you know what? I'm begging you. Open up your heart, open up your mind, take a look on the internet, do a search, make sure that you know what you're talking about when you say, "Oh, I'm sorry, I can't listen to that." Because otherwise we're not going to come together. We need to both listen to each other's sides, and we need to open up our hearts, or we're not going to get anywhere, guys. All right, I think that's all I want to say. Is there anything that you can think to say?
Sounds good.
Yeah.
Yep. I just want to say, remember, there's a God that, that sun comes up every day. We breathe fresh air every day. We get sunlight. We get moonlight at night. There's divinity all around us, and it's showing us, and it's taking care of us, and it's serving us 24/7. It's beating our heart. It's our eyes that see. It's in us. It's all around us. So never forget, there's plenty, more so good than there is evil here. And goodness and God will prevail. We win in the end.
Amen.
Amen.
All right, guys. Well, over and out from Dan and Angela Clark.
Right. Thank you so much.
All right. Thanks for listening.
Thanks for listening.
Good night.
Good night.